Zoom-nya nggak mau kebuka, mungkin satu lagi join pakai HP gitu. Terus kameranya.
Hello, good morning, Joseph. Mhm.
Hello, good morning. Dr. Octiva, good morning.
Hello. And then, yeah, I have a question from my friends when I have to address someone. Is it okay if I mention your family name? I mean, I call you Nationalist or Joseph?
Yeah, that's okay.
Which one, Nationalist or Joseph?
Either you may just call my first name, Joseph.
Oh, your first name. Okay, Mas
Yeah, that's
Joseph.
okay. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So I can also address to Harriet, yes, not Marcule. Instead of
Yeah,
Harriet, I say
Harriet is okay.
Harriet is okay. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. Okay. Okay, and then I really sorry for the last discussion that we have because this is very, very something that happened in the last time, the last moment.
Yeah, it's okay.
Because
No
you
worries.
know that as an institution, I think the support should be given by the faculty. But the last information that I got from the dean, they will support this international seminar. I mean, and then don't worry. uh, uh, yeah, we are going still have financial support from the faculty. Just that. So it will be very, very helpful for us, and then uh, this can overcome some problem that you have in the last discussion. Then we are very, very glad to have you. Hello, good morning, Harriet. Are you? Should I call you Harriet or
Yes.
Marilo? Which one?
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, sir. Harriet po. Oh,
Yes.
It's nice to see you virtually, Dr. Octiva.
So this morning we are going to have two presenter, right? Harriet and also Joseph. And then I do really hope that this international seminar is one step that the first step, I mean the first step, and then this can be followed by another cooperation, for example, research or giving lecture.
Yeah. We will definitely plan to draft for the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between our department, your English literature.
Yang research.
Department. Am I right, Dr. Octiva? The MOU that we will have for further collaboration or collaborative activities that we will conduct in the future between your university and our university.
That's yes. I think this is a good news to the dean of our faculty because the last time I met him and then I mentioned that one and then she welcomed this new collaboration with the university coming from Philippines. And then we also have collaboration with some universities in Malay. And then I think this is a good step for us also to elaborate, yeah, to extend our collaboration with other university coming from different countries. Yes.
We encourage more schools, international schools to
Hello.
collaborate with us as much as
Tim, do you
possible.
have
Yeah.
a problem with the connection? Can you hear my voice clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you, Dr. Activa.
Okay. Yes. So, yeah, uh, okay. Um, Dr. Harriet, can you open your camera? Sorry.
Dr. Activa, may I know
Yes.
are the participants that we will have in our
Mhm,
lecture this morning? Are
mhm.
they faculty members from your school or other students also?
Yes. Yeah.
Both.
Yes. Most of the participant are our students and
Okay.
also the family members of English departments. And then I already asked my friends, yeah, the other lecturers, I mean, to join the seminar in the morning. And then we also asked our students to take participants in the discussion this morning. Hello, good morning, Harriet. Nice to see you.
Yes, good morning,
Good
Dr.
morning.
Octiva, and to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Good morning, Dr. Harriet.
It's nice seeing everyone here in the virtual platform. Yes, good morning.
Dr. Harriet is currently the head of our department.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, she is
Mm,
currently the head of our department, the Department of Languages and Literature in our university here in the Philippines.
okay.
Yes,
Yes.
nice to meet you, Mr. Harriet.
And I am currently the designated
Yeah.
external affairs coordinators and internationalization coordinator, the one who is tasked to uh
Namanya siya.
collaborate with other schools, international schools, for
Mm.
example.
Yes.
Yes.
Uh, Once again, I would like to say
Say
that when I met the dean of faculty of humanities, and then I talked to him about this.
future plan that we are going to have between
Yeah.
Diponegoro University and also Visayas University, and then he welcomed warmly this collaboration, and then we do really hope that uh, yeah, I think we can follow this collaboration by signing the memorandum of
Yeah.
understanding between our faculty and your
So we will be the one to send the MOU copy to your email, Dr. Activa, and you will
yes.
just check it with your key officials.
Yes, that will be good. Okay. Uh, good. Okay, can we start now, Joseph?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for your instructions if we will start.
Okay.
It's okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are honored to have the presence of the head of our English Literature Study Program, Dr. Oktifa Henry Chandra M. Hum, as the head of the English Literature Study Program in Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Diponegoro. And of course, we are excited to welcome our outstanding invited speakers, Mr. Joseph V. Nacionales, LPT MA, and Ms. Harriet May A. Merculo, PhD, from Eastern Visayas State University, as well as our moderator, Ms. Celestia Ningtyes, SSMA, from Universitas Diponegoro. Thank you everyone for joining our first session of Visiting Professor on Language, Literature, and Culture, an event hosted by the English Literature Study Program, Universitas Diponegoro. And I am Trisna Aditi Maharani as the Master of Ceremonies on today's event. I will briefly convey our agenda this morning. First is the opening by the MC. Second, singing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. And then a welcoming speech by the head of our English Literature Study Program, Dr. Oktifa Henry Chandra M. Hum. And next, the presentation of our topic today, Language, Literature, and Culture, by our speakers, Mr. Joseph V. Nacionales, LPT MA, and Ms. Harriet May A. Merculo, PhD, which will be guided by our moderator, Ms. Celestia Ningtyes, SSMA, followed by a Q&A session. Now, everyone, let's start with our first agenda today, which is singing the national anthem of Indonesia, Indonesia Raya. For the operator, the screen is yours. Thank you very much, everyone. Now, let us hear the welcoming speech by the head of our English Literature Study Program, Dr. Oktifa Henry Chandra M. Hum. Over to you, Mr. Oktifa.
Thank you very much, Adisti. Good morning, distinguished speaker Joseph P. Nacionales, LPT MA, and Harriet May Merculo, PhD, colleagues, students, and friends. It is my honor to speak on behalf of the Dean of Faculty of Humanities as we gather to reflect on two vital and fascinating themes. The first one is about the artificial intelligence in writings and linguistic landscape in our public space. The Faculty of Humanities has always been at the heart of exploring how language, culture, and technology shape human experience. Today, As AI continues to redefine how we create and communicate, we find ourselves standing at a new intersection of innovation and responsibility. Artificial intelligence and writing offer so many benefits. It enhances productivity, support multilingual communication, and even inspire creativity. Tools powered by AI help students write more clearly, researchers analyze data more efficiently, and writers explore new forms of expressions. Yet, these advantages come with challenge. We must confront issues of originality, authorship, and ethical use. The human voice, the very essence of thought and identity, must never be lost amidst algorithmic precisions. Equally, linguistic landscape that surround us, the word on our street, in advertisement, and also digital screens, tell stories about who we are and what we value. It reflects diversity, power, and change. In this evolving landscape, AI-driven translation and digital media are transforming how language coexist and compete in public spaces. Together, this topic reminds us that technology and humanity are not in opposition. Once again, technology and humanity are not in opposition, but in conversation. The humanities give meaning to our innovations, ensuring that progress is guided by wisdom, empathy, and cultural understanding. On behalf of the Dean, I extend appreciation to all participants, organizers, and scholars contributing to this dialogue. May today's discussion inspire us to write the future responsibly, inclusively, and creatively. Thank you very much. Over to you, Adisti.
Thank you very much, Dr. Octifa, for your warm opening remarks. And now, everyone, before we start the main agenda today, let us all take a group picture first. Therefore, if you haven't turned on your camera, please do it now, and we will wait for around 2 minutes for everyone to turn on their camera. Okay, everyone, I will start counting. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perhaps one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's all. Next, let me introduce our distinguished moderator, Ms. Celestia Ningtyes, SSMA. Ms. Sulistiani Ningtyas SSMA is a lecturer at the English Literature Department, Faculty of Humanities, Universitas Diponegoro. She earned her bachelor's degree in English Literature from Universitas Brawijaya and her master's degree in literature from Universitas Gadjah Mada. Her academic interests focus on sociology of literature, exploring the relationship between literary works and society, and in addition, she have published several books and actively participated in several research projects. Now, everyone, we have reached the core of the event that has been anticipated, which is the delivery of our topic, Language, Literature, and Culture, by our speakers, Mr. Joseph P. Nacionales, LPTMA, and Ms. Harriet May A. Merculo, PhD, which will be guided by our moderator, Ms. Celestia Ningtyas, SSMA. Over to you, Ms. Tias.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adisti, for the kind introduction. Good morning, everyone. It is a great honor to be with all of you today for this academic gathering that celebrates the richness of language, literature, and culture across contexts. And I am Tias, and I will serve as the moderator for the first session this morning. And in this session, we will listen to two distinguished speakers from the Department of Languages and Literature, Eastern Visayas State University, the Philippines, who will share their expertise on the intersection of language and literature. And to begin, we will hear about a topic that is highly relevant in today's digital and academic landscape, generative AI-assisted English writing assessment. And well, as we know, artificial intelligence or AI continues to transform education, and it offers powerful tools that can support writing assessment and feedback. However, it also brings certain challenges, including concerns about authenticity, fairness, and also pedagogy. So to explore these benefits and challenges, we are pleased to have Mr. Joseph P. Nacionales, LPTMA, a faculty member of the Department of Languages and Literature, Eastern Visayas State University, the Philippines. And before we begin, let me remind everyone that you are all welcome to share your thoughts and questions during the Q&A sessions later, which will be open after both speakers have delivered their presentations. You may also use the chat box if the speakers give specific instructions or ask for your responses during the sessions. And now, allow me to briefly share Mr. Joseph's academic and professional background, everyone. So, Mr. Joseph P. Nacionales is an English faculty member in the Department of Languages and Literature at the School of Arts and Sciences, Eastern Visayas State University, Philippines, where he has taught English and literature courses to undergraduate students for nearly 12 years. And currently, he serves as the coordinator of internalization and external affairs at the university. He completed a Bachelor of Arts in English language degree at Eastern Visayas State University and obtained his Master of Arts in English language and literature teaching degree from Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines. He is also a reviewer for Frontiers in Education and also Helion, both Scopus Q1 journals, and has published numerous papers in English language studies and teaching. He has presented at international conferences in the Philippines, Thailand, and Malaysia, and served as a guest lecturer at Palembang University in Indonesia, where he taught sociolinguistics and cross-cultural understanding. And recently, he has also published his book titled Business Report Writing, and he is also a licensed professional teacher specializing in English and a certified Microsoft Education Ambassador in the Philippines. Okay, now without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Joseph P. Nacionales. Over to you, Mr.
Good morning,
Joseph.
everyone. Thank you so much to our moderator for the kind introduction. I hope that you can hear my voice clearly. and you can see me on the screen. You can see my face. Okay. So let me share my PowerPoint presentation first. I hope that my PowerPoint is in full screen already.
Yes, it's perfect, Mr. Jasak.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so let me express my gratitude, of course, for the invitation for giving a lecture for this seminar with the faculty members and students of the English Literature Department of Universitas Diponegoro in Indonesia. So I will be discussing a timely topic, a controversial topic that we have now, that we encounter now, especially among both, actually, for both students, and assisted in benefits and challenges. So for my lecture, I will be discussing or sharing with you the practices, specific experiences that I had with my English classes in our university in the Philippines. My apologies. I think I got disconnected. My internet right now is having a problem or some issues, I think. Let me share my slide again. Okay, so I hope that my PowerPoint is on full screen already. So my apologies, I got disconnected. So let me
Yes.
continue my presentation. So that's it. I will be sharing as well some publications that we had recently regarding the use of generative AI in English classes. So I will be sharing the finding. I would love to get a quick um sense of your experience with AI tools in your classes. So I have flashed there on the screen a QR code. You can scan the QR code and provide an answer on this short or brief survey that I have. Or you may have the link that I will send in the, let me send the link as well in the chat section. Wait, let me copy the link and then share it on the. So I just sent the link. So I was able to exit my PowerPoint. I'm sorry. Let me share it again. Um, okay, you may use the link also. Okay, let me check your answers before we proceed to the main discussions for my lecture to see your insights or experiences that you have with regard the use of AI tools in your classes. You may answer this as a student, how you use AI tools with your assignments, in your writing tasks, or as a faculty member, how you use these generative AI tools um, in the teaching and learning process. So let me know your insights and experiences as well. Okay, so we have here some answers from the participants. Let me read. Yeah, sometimes I use AI to gain basic knowledge, okay, to get information and check my writing. Okay, so yes, I use AI for teaching and or writing. I use it to correct or strengthen out my confusion about the subject. For polishing, okay. I use AI for brainstorming. Yeah, it's very common to use for proofreading, for editing purposes. Some answers is getting new ideas. Searching on Google's would give me logical reasons based on articles. Okay. Generate outline of one topic. So this is also very common. We use AI to outline a topic. Yeah. I do not use AI tools in my writing classes as I prefer to do my work by myself. Yeah, definitely this is a good practice that we could employ in our classes without relying too much on AI tools. Yeah. No, so far I don't use any AI tools in my writing classes. Okay. Yes, sometimes I use AI to gain knowledge. Okay. Helping me during the class section, and of course, it is for good purposes. It can help me to understand more about the material. So yeah, definitely, we struggle, for example, as a student, to understand a topic or a reading material that was given to us by our professor, and you wanted to to learn about the content of that material as soon as possible because you are running out of time maybe, right? And you need to write something about it. So you use AI. Some students would use AI to provide a gist or a summary and present some relevant points about that material. Okay. Use AI in my teaching and writing classes. I use them because they help both teachers and students work more effectively. Okay, so this is a positivist view of integrating AI in the classroom as a faculty member, as a teacher. Okay. They use ChatGPT, Grammarly, Calboot, okay, to provide quick feedback on grammar, vocabs, and writing structure. So yes, I use AI tools, use them for make some ideas or teach me how to do something or summarize something. So this is what I was telling you a while ago on providing gist or a summary of a material, okay, to make it easy for us, to make it more efficient to filter salient information on the material. So we usually use ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. I use it for paraphrasing and to summarize long text. Definitely, this is a very common practice among students. For example, right? We use ChatGPT and then we just input a very long text that we wanted to condense, okay? And then ChatGPT will filter out salient or significant information that you wanted to get with that lengthy text. So this one, I rarely use AI. So the same with the others. With this answer, he or she prefer learning through YouTube. Okay. I actually use them a little. Okay, so with moderation, a little. So if the context isn't really easy to consume, I use AI for breakdown only. AI makes it easier with example. So also to use them for paraphrase and polishing my text. Okay. So I do it sometimes to help me understand material I don't understand. So to grasp a complex material. So we definitely resort to the use of AI such as ChatGPT, journals for references for my writing needs, and summarize some materials as well. Okay, so we've got varied answers from different perspectives from our faculty members as teachers and from students as well. So majority of the responses, as we can see, are positive. They are optimistic with the use of generative AI tools. Okay. But there are few answers from the responses that would limit detach themselves from the use of this AI, and they would prefer to do it by themselves with the skill, the natural skill or competence that they have, like for instance in writing essays. Okay, so let me go back to my slide. Thank you so much for your responses, for sharing your insights and inputs. At least we were able to know from the participants' perspectives that majority of you here are into the use of AI. Okay. Some are fully reliant to the use of AI, but some are in moderation, okay, on the use of AI. And there are only very few who totally do not use AI. Okay. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. Uh, okay. So we are now on my context slide. I hope that I was able to present the right slide. at the moment. Okay, and you are seeing the right slide. My context in the current semester. Okay, so in our university currently, I am teaching 9 classes in all. Okay, I am currently teaching 9 classes in all in our university in the current semester in our present or current semester in our university. And I'm teaching different courses from history of the English language to our English major students to purposive communication, a general education course to different programs, engineering, management, business, hospitality management, technology, and so on. And I also teach Philippine literature, so introducing different literary pieces about the Philippines. Okay, so this is my teaching load, and as you can see on the number of students per course, there are students that have 47 students in one class. I also have 40 students. You can see there that I have also 44 students, 30 students, 41, 48 students. I have 48 students in one class. So as you can see, all of these are large classes or huge classes. Okay? I don't know in Indonesia, in Universitas Diponegoro, if you have 40 students or 48 students in one class. I guess you don't have this kind of number, I guess, in one class, right? Because when I taught um social linguistics class um with my students at Palembang University in South Sumatra, Indonesia, they have only 6 students in one class, no, right? So this is also the same with your university. So you have only very few students in one class, like 6 students or even 4 students in one class. But there is a big difference with the number of students that we have between Philippines and Indonesia. Because if you teach in a public university like us, okay, you will encounter teaching one class with 48 students or even 60 students in one class. So that is totally a big class that you will, manage for the whole semester. So imagine managing different students, 60 students with different linguistic backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, and different learning styles that you need to adopt into, that you need to manage for the whole semester. So imagine managing this kind of large class, okay? And you are teaching writing, okay? And you will encounter students, almost all of them are using generative AI. So when it comes to assessing your English class, you get bombarded, you are burdened with a lot of um tasks that your students will be submitting. So you will be expecting, for example, in one of my classes, 47 written outputs from my students. And I need to check one by one to each of these outputs if these are authentically written by my students or if they just use AI. So I really need to check one by one each of these tasks of my students. So it's really very challenging for this kind of context or setup that we have in the university. So you need to exert a lot of effort as a professor, as a faculty member in this kind of university that you will be teaching, because here comes the influx of generative AI, and you need to really assess the work of your students with fairness, following all assessment principles that we need to integrate in our classes, especially in evaluating the output of our students. So you really need to exert a lot of effort or much effort as a professor in this kind of context of English classes. Okay. But I will be sharing with you some challenges that we commonly encounter, that I personally encounter with my classes. Okay. And some best practices that I employ as well. So okay. So we have here an excerpt taken from the keynote address.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Joseph.
Yes.
The monitor is still showing your QR code, actually.
Okay. Let me fix this one.
Yes, sure.
I'm sorry because we are fond of using Google Meet in our university.
I
We just
see.
we don't have Zoom subscription actually in our
Okay, I
school.
see. No
Let
problem.
me take a look on the slide. Oh, wait. Hmm. How about this one? Are you seeing the slide that
Yes.
shows my context in the current semester?
Yes, it
Okay.
shows the context in the current semester.
So this was I was sharing a while ago. So I wasn't able to show this while I was sharing with you about the context of our school that we handle, different courses in different with different students, with a very diverse students, diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds. And you can see on the screen is the teaching load, okay, that I have for the current semester. And you can see there the number of students, the different number of students that I have for each class. I have 47, 40, 34, 38, 48. Okay, so that's it. Yeah. So my apologies. I wasn't able to share this. I thought this was presenting when I was sharing this information a while ago. Okay, let me proceed to the next slide. I hope I'm showing the right slide now on the next slide. The quotation
Yes.
from the keynote address by Stefania Giannini of the UNESCO Assistant Director General for Education at the Onassis Foundation's Festival on AI that was held on the 4th of July 2024 in Athens, Greece. So according to her, generative AI is not merely a technological tool. So it's not anymore a technological tool that we should consider in our classes. Okay, it is reshaping already. It is reshaping, transforming how we write, how we assess, okay, how we assess our students, for example, and define learning competence. Okay, so the challenge for educators, according to her, today is not whether to use AI. Okay, it's not anymore in questioning whether we will use AI or not, but how to use it responsibly. Okay, how to use it responsibly. I wanted to highlight this phrase coming from the words of Stefania that um we don't need to debate anymore whether we will use AI or not, because whether we like it or not, AI will always be there in our classrooms. Okay, as faculty members, as professors, we as teachers, we cannot actually remove these generative AI tools because we have a lot of students, especially in our context. Okay, in the Philippines, we have one class with 50 students. So we cannot control all of these 50 students to not use AI. Okay, when we ask them to write an essay, or when we ask them to write a critical reflection about something. So we cannot control them totally. Okay, so they will really resort to the use of AI. Okay. So we should use it responsibly, creatively, and critically. So we should know the specific strategies on how we could at least ensure ethics with the use of these different artificial intelligence. Okay, so on the next slide, I'm showing with you a background of writing assessment practices before the influx or the dominance of generative AI tools. There are generative AI tools before, okay, but it it became uh it became more complicated after the pandemic, okay, especially after the pandemic, that more students are using or resorting to the use of AI. But before the use of Gen AI, the influx of the domination of Gen AI, writing assessment demands rigor in balancing linguistic accuracy and communicative competence with culturally diverse learners. So sharing with you some arguments of Silva and Matsuda. Um, Silva and Matsuda are forerunners in L2 writing studies. Okay, so from their insights, a paper that they published in 2012, they argue that writing assessment must consider the complex interplay of language competence, writer identity, and contextual factors to ensure fairness, validity, and reliability in assessing learners' written performance. Okay, so this would ensure that the texts produced by our learners are carefully evaluated by language teachers adhering to these assessment principles. Okay, so now, um, writing assessment practices have historically shifted toward product-oriented methods, according to Kursan and Matsuda in the recent study in 2018. So this was the practice that we had before the emergence of generative AI in assessing students' writing. Okay, we are more into product-oriented methods. Product-oriented methods. So we just look into the final output, written output of our students instead of looking into the process, okay, or the specific processes one by one. Um, so historically speaking, so we are more inclined first on the product-oriented methods in assessing students' writing. So traditional methods of assessing students' writing performance have long focused on language pedagogy, serving as crucial tools for examining this one. So we are more focused on learners' linguistic competence and grammatical accuracy following conventional writing tools. So we were very strict, okay, before the traditional writing assessment on the linguistic accuracy, the competence, the proficiency of the students in writing, specifically following the conventional or the traditional writing rules, okay, that there should be no parallelism. There should be a period on this. You should use this whatever writing norms or rules that we need to follow. Okay. So here comes AI-driven educational systems during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, I have only a few minutes, so I need to make this fast. Okay, so during the COVID-19 pandemic, so to understand the risks and opportunities of generative AI systems and tools, we can look back to a chapter in our recent history. So I know that we all experienced COVID-19 pandemic and its dramatic impact on education. So there are, a lot of studies that has been conducted that would prove the significant impact of COVID-19 pandemic to the educational landscape, especially in ELT classes, in English classes, where students use technologies, different technologies during the pandemic and even up until the post-pandemic era of education. Okay. So from the different technologies, from using Google Classroom with the use of Schoology, Moodle, we used Google Meet, we used Zoom in our classes, and here comes the influx of AI tools. Here comes ChatGPT, Gemini, Calboot, Deep, and other AI tools that was introduced during the pandemic up until now in the post-pandemic era. And then there were controversial issues that were written in different news outlets in the Philippines, for example, where graduates of the pandemic educational system, where there were some issues that happened. For example, former UP President, pandemic AI behind surge in UP Latin honors. So there were some issues on the surge of students having Latin honors for this specific batch because of they were blaming with the use of because of the use of AI tools. Okay. Baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z are all AI beneficiaries. So there are so many issues that were published, okay, in the different news outlets in the Philippines, okay, that provided a connection of the use of different AI tools on the academic performance of our students. Okay, because for these specific batches after the pandemic, during and after the pandemic, there were a lot of students who got Latin honors, who became cum laude, magna cum laude, and even summa cum laude because of the the benefit that AI provided in learning their classes during the pandemic and after the pandemic. So we have here the UNESCO's 2023 Global Education Monitoring Report. So the lessons learned from the pandemic show that our choices for integrating technology must be guided by the four principles of we have inclusion, equity, quality, and accessibility. So they published this report online. You can access this online by the UNESCO in 2023, where they highlighted these four principles um, to manage our classes with the use of a lot of technology that we are facing and with a lot of generative AI that we have in our classes now. So inclusion, ensuring all learners, regardless of background, benefit from AI tools. Okay. Of course, we need to ensure equity. So providing fair opportunities for learning and assessment. And at the same time, we should ensure quality. So ensuring AI feedback aligns with sound pedagogical principles. And accessibility. So making AI tools affordable as well, intuitive, and available to all learners regardless of their socioeconomic background, their linguistic background, cultural background, etc. Okay. So there was a news that come out in one of the news agency in the Philippines that Philippine schools adopting AI. So the University of the Philippines was among the first in Asia to fully embrace artificial intelligence in the university. So at a virtual press conference, Ryan Lofkin, the instructor vice president for global strategy, said that this university in the Philippines is a prime example of how the country is leading the AI conversation in education sector in Asia. Okay, so there was an emergence already of AI in writing assessment. Okay, in ELT, specifically in ELT classes. So AI-powered assessment, also known as AI-based or AI-enabled assessment, refers to the integration of AI technologies or tools, whatever AI tools, okay, that we integrate to improve various stages of the assessment process, especially in evaluating student work and in delivering feedback. So in recent years, there are a lot of AI tools, okay, that comes in the teaching and learning process that assisted us, for example, among faculty members in essay grading. Okay, so among of these AIs are the use of Turnitin, the Gradescope, CoGrader, ChatGPT, Grammarly, Boot, ProWriting, and so on and so forth. There is an upcoming publication that we have that was accepted for book chapter that we are working now, which is focusing on the use of AI tools in essay scoring. So in this study, in this upcoming study that is for publication, we explored how English teachers, use different AI tools in essay scoring. To be specific, in scoring essays. Okay, so we used here post-structuralist interpretivist perspective with the use of collaborative autoethnography and with the assistance of reflexive thematic analysis as well to analyze the data, the qualitative data that we have. So this is a unique study that would explore how English teachers who are into the use of generative AI, who embraces AI, integrate these tools, these different tools in evaluating essays. Okay. And in one of our publications at the Helion, at the Computers and Education Artificial Intelligence Journal that we published in December 2024, we explored how generative AI foster an inclusive language classroom. So by looking into the critical language pedagogy from English teachers, selected English teachers in the Philippines. So for the methodology of this study, we conducted this qualitative and exploratory study. So we used convenience sampling, and we focuses on 14 English teachers, 8 females and 6 females from different state universities and colleges in the Philippines. And we used open-ended survey questionnaire with follow-up semi-structured interview. And we used thematic analysis to analyze the qualitative data that we have for this study. And for the findings, we have uncovered different benefits of the use of generative AI and some drawbacks as well, or challenges that I will be sharing you with the following slides. So I'm just going to make this quick, okay? So I have consumed my time already. It's already 11. So the first one is generative AI for transformative language assessment experience. Okay, so it totally transformed the language practices of English faculty member in the university who embraces with the use of AI. So they are positive, they are optimistic that the use of this AI would fully engage their English classes. Okay, so we have here some excerpts from the participants, which would support these findings of the study. Okay, so even myself, I'm using ChatGPT to frame a rubric for writing tasks. So I am honestly using ChatGPT for my classes to, for example, in alignment to the transformative language experiences with the use of generative AI. So with this example, I used ChatGPT to design writing assessment rubric that would promote that would promote fairness, transparency, and academic integrity, while ensuring that with the use of these AI tools will still serve as a supportive tool rather than a substitute for human judgment. So of course, you need to think critically as well as an English faculty member when you are asking ChatGPT, for example, to come up with a rubric that would fully align with the assessment focus that you wanted to establish on that specific writing task. Okay. So another findings that we've got for the study is that generative AI um, tailor the language needs of the students. Okay, so the language teachers positively perceived integrating AI, specifically ChatGPT, into their language pedagogy, emphasizing its capacity to enhance language education through personalized learning experiences, interactive simulations, and real-time feedback. Okay, so you can see on the response of participant 2 that Gen AI facilitates dynamic and interactive language learning environments, which offers real-time feedback with diverse language scenarios. So in connection with my classroom practices that I am employing, I also use ChatGPT, for example, to give contextualized feedback, but with responsibility, with full responsibility and um, ethics, of course. So this is very helpful if you have large classes, okay? Especially if you have large classes, because the assistance that ChatGPT would give to you as a professor who handles students with 60 students in one class, okay, and you will be assessing them one by one, it could make your assessment procedure more efficient as much as possible, okay? And you need to give feedback because feedback is important in English classes. We don't need to remove feedback, okay? Especially when we are teaching writing to our students. So feedback will always be there in our class. So to make my task more efficient and more convenient, so I would ask different AI tools such as ChatGPT to contextualize the feedback that I will be giving to each of my students' written output. Okay. So another is Gen AI connects learners from diverse linguistic backgrounds. So this is also very important if you have um, a class with students who are highly diverse in terms of the use of language, okay, and the culture that they have. So I usually use AI-assisted collaborative writing projects as one of the practice that I use in my classes. This is a a very important activity that I always let my students be immersed in my classes with the use of AI-assisted collaborative writing projects. One common tool even before the emergence of AI, we commonly use this, such as the use of Google Document, wherein they are immersed fully to really connect with one another in real time while they are drafting an essay, for example, where you could also check the progress of their collaborative writing output. So another one is Gen AI for real-time feedback and support. So this is very important because as I mentioned a while ago, I use AI tool to generate instant feedback. Okay, because instant feedback is really it's very important for us teachers to be provided to our classes. We need to make it more instant as much as possible. Um, there's no use of providing feedback if you will give feedback at the end of the semester already. Okay, so as much as possible, you really need to provide feedback, written feedback, specifically with the use of written corrective feedback with the output of of your students for each of the writing activity that you will let them do or work in your class. But every innovation, it carries its own set of complications. So that's why there are also drawbacks that we will encounter aside from the benefits that we will have with the use of these generative AI tools. But we need to be keen and be strategic enough as to how we will be able to manage these challenges or drawbacks that we will encounter. So, for example, one of the findings of this study was on fostering academic dishonesty among our students. while losing their skills to write. So I was able to read one of the responses of the participants AI because he or she wanted to use her natural skill or her own skill only when writing, okay? Which is also good because nowadays, because of the use of AI, most of the students, majority in my context, okay, in my context, I don't know in your context there in Indonesia. So majority of the students would really prefer or resort with the use of AI tools in writing that would lead to academic dishonesty, which is not good, which is definitely not good, and not good practice that we should have that we will have in our classes. Okay, so according to one of the participants, there are students who just submit their work by fully relying on this AI tool. So the writing skills are greatly compromised. Okay, so it's not fully helping them actually. So this is one of the reality and the challenge that we will encounter. Okay, so as a teacher who encountered this problem, I would religiously, judiciously use Turnitin software. I don't know if you use Turnitin software in your university or have you used Turnitin before in your classes, especially among faculty members. So I commonly use Turnitin software to combat students plagiarized written outputs. It is still a burden for me because I have a lot of students that I need to, to turn in the outputs that they have to check in the Turnitin software. But patience is a virtue because once I got the result from the software, it's enlightening. It is an enlightening, approach that would inform me whether the student fully used AI in his or her task or not. Okay, and it will also inform how I will evaluate the work of my student because of the results that I got from Turnitin. Okay, so it's now the battle between generative AI tool to another AI tool. So as a teacher who is receiving, outputs from the students that were perhaps generated with the use of AI, we could also use AI with the use of Turnitin to combat, okay, these problems that we will encounter so that this would guide us um along the process of the assessment procedure that we will have in our classes. So I also use, aside from the AI tool, I let my students accomplish as well an AI declaration form in my classes, especially if they are submitting a written task. So I let them sign up for this, accomplish this form, whether they use AI, they will disclose whether they use AI or they did not use AI. Okay. And what specific AI tools did they use in writing this assignment or on this specific task? Okay. So I usually use this form. I created this form, originally created this form for my classes. Okay. And there's an agreement that they need to sign. Okay. And there's a question also, why did they use this AI? Okay. So that I would know. So another one is in AI diminishes students' critical thinking. This is very true to all, I think. Especially among students, in classes where students would fully rely with the use of AI, they would just copy what they have uh, what the input from the AI platform, and they just paste it in the document and they submit it with their teachers. So definitely it would diminish, okay? It would diminish the critical thinking skills or competence of our students, which as teachers, we don't want this to happen. We don't want this to happen because as much as possible, aside from the basic comprehension that we wanted to develop with our students, we wanted to develop as well their higher order thinking skills, such as their critical thinking competence or skills, okay? Which is somehow difficult nowadays, okay? Because if students are running out of time to submit a task, a writing task, an essay, and then they would just copy um, from AI, from ChatGPT, and then they will not do something anymore about it on the content of their output, and they will just submit it. So there is no, it will definitely not foster their critical thinking skills. Okay, so we need to be aware with that as English teachers who have this kind of classes. So I normally use double entry reflective journals for my classes, especially in my major writing task. Okay, so I let my students write after I give them a major writing task as a take-home activity, which I know they will be using AI, and then um of when we meet in our classroom in person, so I will let them accomplish this one. Use this double entry reflective journal to recapitulate what they have answered, written in their writing task or activity, and critical reflect as well to check whether they were the one who really wrote the content of their written output, major writing task or not. So with this, because this is an in-person activity that I always conduct in my classes, just to reevaluate or check, um, uh, just to verify, okay. So Gen AI feedback validity. So this is also one of the challenges that we encounter because AI may identify grammar errors but struggles with discourse level feedback, such as the organization, the argument, and cohesion in their essays, according to one of the participants of this, which is also true. Okay. So that's why we need to really check on the input that we always give to AI, and we need to be specific also. We need to be careful as well, okay, on the use of these AI tools. So this is one of the practice I use, the comparison in the writing process. This is very a rigorous process, but this is worth it if you apply this in your classroom, just to ensure that students are not really using AI tools for the writing written output. Another one is Gen AI use unclear school policies. There are unclear school policies until now. Even up until now, even in our school, there is no clear school policies for the use of AI tools. Okay? So what I do is just with the absence of these guidelines still in our university, there is no manual yet with the ethical use of AI, how we will be able to regulate the use of these AI tools. I just ensure, okay, with my classroom, with my classes that I will be establishing my classroom AI use guidelines. I orient my students in the first at the beginning of the semester, do an open dialogue with them with the use of this AI, so that I will be able to inform them with the expectations that we need to set for this specific class. Okay, for the conclusions and implications, so reimagining, we need to reimagine what we measure. Okay, since these Gen AI tools are already changing the educational landscape and we cannot escape from using these AI tools, and it is becoming an important platform to enhance teaching and learning process in writing classes. So the schools, universities should have a more critical and adaptive stance, especially considering the contributions of these AI tools to equity in ELT. Okay, providing fairness to especially among learners in our classes. We need to provide an open dialogue for ethical use of AI. This is very important. Okay, we should not miss this in our classes, in as part of our engagement with our students. So there should be an ongoing dialogue about the ethical use of AI in education or in ELT, ensuring students' privacy and data security, and to avoid biases with the use of AI generated content. And of course, we need to build AI literacy through faculty training and support. Of course, as English teachers, in different universities, wherever country you are, we need to be equipped from time to time, okay? From time to time. So, schools should provide ongoing professional development so that we teachers stay updated with the latest advancement in AI technology and its pedagogical applications through training. We need to attend workshops from time to time and other professional development programs because by attending conferences or any fora, either it's in person or virtually, we will be able to not only learn from the speakers who are expert on the use of AI in ELT or in language education or in literature teaching, but also, of course, we could learn from the participants, the co-participants of that event. So it's a co-creation, okay, a community that we will build that we will be learning from time to time. So which is a very important practice that we need to do as faculty members in the university because we need to learn not only from the context, the experiences that we have, but also the experiences of others, of other English faculty members from other schools, from other countries, okay? Because we might learn something significant from them that we could employ in our own context, in our own classes, okay? So the balance in writing assessment lies in partnership. So we can use AI to enhance our assessment practices, but not to replace the teacher's insight. So the best assessment are both technologically informed, but at the same time, humanly grounded. So we should not remove the power of teachers physically, okay? Our skills as teachers, as English teachers, while we are using AI as well in our classroom, while our students are using AI as well in our classroom. So there should be a balance, okay, on the innovation that we have now with the use of AI in our English classes, at the same time with the traditional practices that we had before. So it's a partnership. We should establish this good partnership or balance, okay, in our classes. So these are the references that I use. I wanted to add this one. Our school through our department will be conducting the third IELTS on November 26 and 27. So it's very close already via Zoom. So I'm inviting you all to scan the QR code and join this conference that we will be hosting on the coming week. Okay, so this is the third IELTS, International Colloquium on ELT and Sustainability, with the theme Interweaving Generative AI and ELT, Utopia or Dystopia to Education for Sustainable Development. So this is a free conference that you could attend, both faculty, researchers, and students from your school. You may just scan the QR code or you may visit our Facebook page, this one, to get more updates about the upcoming conference that we will conduct. All right, thank you so much. I'm done with my presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Joseph, for that insightful presentation about the benefits and challenges of AI in English writing assessment. So for the participants, you may leave questions or comments in our chat box, but we'll open the Q&A session later. So everyone now, let us continue to our second speaker, who will discuss linguistic landscape, language, power, and ideology in public spaces. So the study of linguistic landscape investigates how languages are displayed in public spaces, on signs, for example, billboards, shop names, or posters, and how this visible text reflects social hierarchies, power relations, and ideologies. And it reminds us that language is not only a means of communication, but also a tool of representation and resistance. So to discuss this fascinating topic, we are honored to have Dr. Harriet May A. Merculo, a faculty member of the Department of Languages and Literature, Eastern Visayas State University, the Philippines. And now allow me to briefly share Dr. Harriet's academic and professional background, everyone. So Dr. Harriet May A. Merculo is an English faculty member and currently the head of the Department of Languages and Literature. She teaches both core and general education courses with a specialization in the areas of English language and literature. Dr. Merculo earned her Bachelor of Arts in Communication Arts from the University of the Philippines, Visayas, Tacloban College in 2009, and she later on pursued graduate studies at Leyte Normal University, where she completed her Master in English degree in 2012. And in her continuing commitment to academic excellence and research, she obtained her Doctor of Philosophy in English Language and Literature from the Ateneo de Manila University in 2025. As an educator and scholar, Dr. Merculo is committed to advancing the academic study of English language and literature, and she has delivered research presentations on linguistic landscapes and translanguaging at regional, national, and international conferences. In addition, she has published her scholarly work in international refereed and Scopus Index journals. And now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Harriet. Over to you, Dr. Harriet.
Thank you so much, Ms. Diaz. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes, perfect, Dr. Harriet.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Diaz, and to everyone in the platform, a pleasant morning. So before anything else, I would like to thank the administrators, faculty members, as well as especially the dean and the head of the Faculty of Humanities of the Universitas Diponegoro for inviting me as one of the speakers for these international seminar on language, literature, and culture. Okay, so my talk will focus on linguistic landscape, language power, and ideology in public spaces. So for my outline of my lecture, we will start first with an overview of what linguistic landscape is, then followed by a discussion on language, space, and society. Then this will be followed by power and ideology in LL, then multilingualism and identity, as well as ideology, globalization, and linguistic landscape. And of course, methods of studying linguistic landscape. And after which, I'll be presenting my study on linguistic landscape, which I have just conducted recently. All right. So when we talk about linguistic landscape, this term was actually coined and popularized by Landry and Borges in 1997, wherein they defined linguistic landscape, or LL, as the visibility and salience of languages on public and commercial signs in a given territory or region. Okay, so in other words, when we talk about LL, we're looking into the written language, okay, the written form of language that we see in texts and signs in public spaces. So as what Gorter mentioned, it is the use of language in its written form. So Landry and Borges, as well as other scholars, were recognized as the pioneers of linguistic landscape research, and their work on LL, okay, has been the foundation and source of emerging LL studies. So aside from Landry and Borges, we also have Senos and Gorter, wherein they focus on the study of linguistic landscape in the context of multilingualism. There's also Ben Raphael et al. In 2006, wherein he studied on the hegemonic notion of English or the place of English in the linguistic landscape, as well as Scullin and Wong Scullin's 2003 concept of geosemiotics, which has been the foundation or the framework of various LL studies. All right, so when we talk about linguistic landscape, we're not just looking, right, about the languages that we see on science. It's not just about counting languages, but it's also asking, okay, why certain languages are displayed. Okay, so there are reasons why these languages are used in this text or in these signages, whose voices are heard and silenced, and how LL or linguistic landscape reveals relationships among language, power, and ideology, as well as how it shapes our understanding of identity and space. So these are the concepts that will revolve in this presentation. All right, so let's begin with the relationship between language and space in relation to the study of linguistic landscape. So accordingly, language does not exist in a vacuum. It lives within social context. So in other words, every word we see or hear carries traces of history, power, and identity. For example, when we read a street name, right, or maybe a shop sign or a government notice posted, we're not just reading words. Okay, we are actually reading the social order that is made visible through this signs or texts. Okay, so public spaces such as streets, buildings, markets, monuments are not just neutral backdrops, they are socially constructed and politically contested arenas. So every linguistic choice that appears in these spaces communicates messages about belonging, authority, and legitimacy. Right. So as I was saying earlier, I've mentioned that the language does not exist in a vacuum. So this means that language is always embedded, right, in relationships of power, culture, and community. In other words, it's not just merely a tool for communication. Rather, it's a way of constructing reality, negotiating identity, and expressing belonging. So, for example, when we encounter language on public signs, so we are not just reading what's written, we're actually interpreting choices that have been made. For example, why is it that this language was used and not the other? For instance, we see English signs or English written texts or signages and not the use of local languages. So what's the reason behind that? Why is it that the English written text is bigger or it's larger, it's more emphasized than the other languages, particularly the local languages? So there is an ideological assumption or power dynamics that play with it. And also, we can look into the social meanings, right, that are being projected or suppressed. So each of these choices reflect broader structures. So which languages are valued, whose voices are heard, and which identities are erased or ignored. So in this sense, every public display of language is therefore a social act, meaning it tells us something about the community's hierarchy, history, and ideology. Right? According to Henry Lefebvre, he argued that space itself is socially produced. So when you say socially produced, it's not merely physical territory, but it's shaped by power relations, politics, and economic structures. So, for example, when a government names a street or builds a monument or erects a sign, it's not simply labeling geography, but it's producing meaning. For example, if a street sign is named after a politician or a leader, right? So it asserts authority, okay, or colonial continuity, right? Or, for example, if um, a public edifice is named after a national hero, right? So it symbolizes power, right? Or it reclaims space, okay, for another identity or a new identity. So in both cases, naming is actually political, right? And these are seen in signs or texts displayed in the linguistic landscape. So what languages and words appear in public becomes a material expression of political control and at times struggles, right, to resist or define it. So every visible language in public space also implies others that are visible. So for example, if we see only English signs in public spaces in the linguistic landscape of a school, for instance, or of a university, it shows that they value, okay, English language more than the other languages that are currently existing or present in their locality. So this makes the other language invisible or excluded, okay, in the linguistic context. So the hierarchy of visibility mirrors, right, the social hierarchy of speakers. So those languages that are linked to power and prestige are the ones that are elevated. For example, English language, French, these are normally the languages that are linked to power, prestige, modernity, authority, and these are considered as the language of authoritarianism, the language of elitism, the language of professionalism. Well, those local languages, okay, say for example, here in the Philippines, the regional or local languages, just like Waray language, these are associated with the marginalized, okay, communities, and these are sometimes relegated, okay, in the periphery. Okay, they are sidelined and they are not visible, okay, in the linguistic landscape. Now, this case, okay, so what we call linguistic hegemony. So linguistic hegemony is the process by which certain languages come to symbolize authority while others are constructed as inferior, right? So this brings us to a key idea that space becomes, right, a semiotic battleground, wherein when you talk about these battleground, it's a site of struggle over meaning. So space serves as a platform by which we struggle. Speakers, so users of the language, struggle over meaning. So different actors, for example, governments, corporations, activists, and citizens compete to shape what is seen, read, and remembered in public space. So each sign, each graffiti or mural is actually participating in an ongoing dialogue or confrontation between competing ideologies. Okay, for example, when we see graffiti on government signs and there are indigenous words painted over English official text, this can serve actually as an act of resistance or defiance, wherein it reclaims visibility for the local languages or the silenced groups or speakers. On the other hand, when we see multilingual shop signs, for example, wherein they combine both the global and local languages, like for example, English and Filipino or English and Waray, so it attracts both tourists and residents, and this reflects tension, okay, between commerce and cultural identity. Another example for murals and protest banners, we can see here indigenous movements use of language in order to reclaim space and rewrite public narratives of belonging. So these examples remind us that linguistic landscape is therefore alive, wherein it constantly shifts as people contest, negotiate, and interpret the meanings of public space. So while linguistic landscapes can reflect existing power structures, they can also challenge them, right? So looking at some powerful cases, for example, in South Africa, uh, multilingual signage in the country's 11 official languages became a symbol of inclusivity and transformation. Another example, in Wales, the increased presence of Welsh alongside English on road signs and public buildings revitalized the language and affirmed a sense of cultural pride. Right? The same case in Quebec, wherein laws mandating French prominence in signage are not only about communication, but it asserts their identity and resist linguistic dominance. So these examples, all these cases show that language in public space becomes a tool of ideological resistance and cultural empowerment. So it actually transforms space from a passive reflection of society into an active medium of change. And it therefore shows or asserts that this is who we are. Kumbaga, it shows that the speakers of this not so valid languages, okay, are being recognized, right? So therefore, the relationship between excuse me, language, space, and society is considered as deeply political. So public signs or signage is not just about language itself. It's not just a mere decoration, but it is a political discourse made visible, right? So through it, we can trace how power operates, how identities are affirmed or denied, and how communities struggle to be seen. So based on these, we can see that LL or linguistic landscape serves two major functions. First, it is a mirror, okay, that reflects social hierarchies and ideologies. And it also serves as an instrument capable of reshaping these very hierarchies through acts of defiance or resistance, inclusion, and transformation. So in short, space speaks, and the language it speaks tell us who holds power, who belongs, and who is fighting to be heard. Now that we've explored how language interacts with space, let's turn to the question, how do power and ideology operate in the linguistic landscape? So to understand this, we can draw on the ideas of Pierre Bourdieu, okay, who reminds us that language is never neutral. In other words, it is always bound with power, status, and symbolic value. So Bourdieu introduced the concept of linguistic capital, which he defines as the value society attaches to certain ways of speaking. So just as people assess different or possess different amounts of economic or social capital, they also possess different levels of linguistic capital. So meaning not all languages or even dialects carry the same social weight. Right? So there are languages which are considered prestigious, educated, or modern. Case in point is the English language, while others are stigmatized and they are branded as rural, informal, or inferior. And these are uh, relegated or tagged with the local languages. Okay. For example, when you speak English fluently, diba, in a globalized world, it opens various economic and social opportunities, which are less accessible to speakers of local or minority languages. Okay, like for example, when we see a signage that is written in English or maybe in French, diba, it evokes a sense of sophistication, even if it's not an English or a French speaking country. So this process, using language to signal class, taste, or cultural capital is what we call the commodification of language. So when you say commodification of language, we turn language into a marketable aesthetic rather than a communicative necessity. Okay? So it's very important to remember that this hierarchy does not arise from linguistic differences themselves. So we cannot say that English is better than Tagalog or Quechua because all languages are equal. They are considered equal regardless if they are it's a national, official, or a regional or a local language. It's just simply some languages are valued more because of historical, political, and economic power. So to understand why certain languages carry more prestige, we need to talk about the concept of ideology. So in social linguistics, language ideology refers to the belief systems that make existing power relations seem natural or inevitable. So when I say ideology, it's not just about explicit political opinions. It's the logic that shapes our everyday assumptions about language. So some of the common language ideologies that are existing are, one is that the belief that English rather is the language of progress, given that when we use English, it opens us to a various or a varied economic and social opportunities. Okay, that's one ideological belief on language. Another is that when we use French, for instance, the French language is the language of culture and sophistication. And the sad thing is that local dialects or local languages, okay, they are considered as informal, they are considered as uneducated, and so these are not seen, or maybe they're seen, but it's rarely seen in signs or signages in public spaces, right? So these ideologies, the one that I've mentioned, these are not the objective truths. So they are just constructed. They're just socially constructed, maybe because it's built over centuries or years of colonial thought or colonization, globalization, and class stratification. Now, when these ideologies become normalized, so they justify inequality in subtle ways. So it seems that it's already normal, for instance, that government offices, universities, or even luxury brands to use English, even when societies where most people speak something different else. So English has become the status quo language, okay, in public spaces, disregarding the other languages, the minority languages, particularly the local languages present in the linguistic context. So this normalization of linguistic hierarchy is one of the most powerful forms of ideological control. So from there we see linguistic inequality. Okay, because there is an unequal treatment of the languages that are present in that context. Now, what makes the linguistic landscape interesting is that it makes these invisible ideologies visible. Okay, so even if it's not explicitly written that this is the ideology of this particular school, of this particular office, or of this particular institution, so it's already implied based on the language that is used. Okay, so language ideologies don't just live in people's minds, they are inscribed in the physical space. And that is through the signages, the public text or signs, the billboards, advertisements, and place names. Take, for example, when we see an official government sign written in a colonial language, for example, in the English language. So we perceive that there is what we call it's a statement of ownership. It's a symbolic statement of ownership. So it's not just a matter of using the language, but there is a bigger agenda behind the use of this language. So it means that if this particular language is used in this public sign, meaning that only the speakers of the language are the ones that are being recognized. So this space belongs to the speakers of this language, particularly the English language. This is the most common language that are seen in public signs and public spaces based on studies conducted in linguistic landscape. Now, when a minority or indigenous language is missing, this implies exclusion. So the absence of this language communicates exclusion. So according to Bourdieu, this is a form of symbolic domination. So when you say symbolic domination, it's a subtle exercise of power that operates through visibility and invisibility. Okay, for instance, when we talk about the materiality, okay, of the public signs. So there are signs or billboards or advertisements in which English appears on top or in a larger font, okay, than the local language. So this implies, or this show that it reinforces the idea that English is the more legitimate language compared to Filipino or other local languages that are present in that public sign, right? So in other words, the public signage doesn't just inform, it organizes social space. Okay, meaning it assigns prestige to some speakers, to some communities, and it marginalizes others, especially those languages that are not seen in these signages. Right now, let's take a look at language policy. So, language policy often shapes linguistic landscapes directly. Why? Because government decisions about what languages appear in public signs are often presented as neutral or practical, but sometimes it's more on an ideological sense. So, for example, here in the Philippines, our language policy is that we use both English and Filipino, right? In correspondence as well as in public signs or yung mga public signages. However, in practice, in reality, what happens is that it's more on the use of the English language. So basically, it gives us a sense that the Philippines, or yeah, we Filipinos value more English being a colonial language, being a language of uh, modernism or modernity, being a language of professionalism, or being a language of prestige, right? So that's the interpretation behind that. So what happens to the minority languages? So it erases, it excludes, it disregards the minority identities, making their languages, and by extension, of course, their speakers invisible. So it's not only the language, but it's more of the users of the language, the speakers. So if their languages do not appear in these public signs, in this uh, signages or texts, so it also erases, okay, their identities, not only the language, but also their identity. All right, so thus language policy, even when framed as administrative or practical, right, it becomes a tool of ideological control. Right. So it defines who counts as part of the national narrative and who does not. All right. So of course, linguistic landscapes are not only instruments of domination; they can also be sites of resistance. So it does not only reflect the existing power structures, but it also a means or a way of challenging, right, or resisting these existing structures or power structures. So, for example, when we see signs used by activists or artists or even communities, okay, using their local languages or those called marginalized languages, okay, through the use of what do you call this, arts, or maybe through translation, these acts challenge linguistic hierarchies and reassert cultural identity. So with the reassertion of their identity, this present what scholars call linguistic citizenship. When you say linguistic citizenship, it is the act of using language to claim, okay, the right to be seen, to be heard, and recognized in public life, right, or in the public space. So through such acts, communities turn the linguistic landscape or the LL into a platform of resistance. Okay, so it again, it does not just show or reflect the existing power structure, but it also challenges or defy the structure. So when you say that the linguistic landscape is not merely decorative, as what I mentioned earlier, it is also political discourse materialized in space. So meaning that every sign, inscription, or omission is part of a broader conversation about power. So all of these, the omission, the presence of languages, the marginalization, the inclusion, the exclusion of languages, these are about power. Okay, the notion of power dynamics. Okay, so for example, when languages in a text or in a signage are arranged, according to, for example, from English then to the local languages, so it shows the prestige and the marginality, right, of these languages. Say, for example, if English is bigger in font, it's it is written using bold letters, it's capitalized. So there is an implication of being visible, of being included. Okay, while those languages that are written in smaller, okay, not clear fonts or letters, so it exudes marginalization or exclusion. So therefore here, the linguistic landscape speaks through visibility and silence. So we can say that the linguistic landscape is both, therefore, a product and a producer of ideology. Okay, so it mirrors social inequalities, but it can also challenge them. So it reveals what society values in terms of the languages used, and it can also make visible, okay, what it tries to forget. So in short, language in public space is never just about information. It's a representation, it's about power and the negotiation of identity, right? So now let's take a closer look at how multilingualism shapes identity in the linguistic landscape. So when we see multiple signs on a public signage, for example, okay, we're seeing more than just communication. We're seeing a visual negotiation of identity among different groups that make up those societies. So this multilingual signage is both a reflection of diversity and a symbolic message that certain groups are recognized and included in public life. For example, in officially multilingual societies such as Singapore or Canada, the presence of multiple languages on signs is meant to project an image of national unity through diversity. Okay, take for instance, in Singapore, public signs often include the use of English, Mandarin Chinese, Malay, and Tamil. So these are the 4 official languages. In the Philippines, we have English and Filipino. So this representation signals that all major ethnic communities are part of the national narrative. But one such visibility, okay, given that it recognizes these country, this nation, recognizes the different languages present, okay, this may seem democratic, but it's also important to look beneath the surface because not all languages are given equal footing even in multilingual displays. So even if the sign uses multilingualism or the use of multiple languages, still there is what we call inequality in terms of for example, the number of times it's used, the number or the shape, the size of the word or the letters. So there is still what we call a sense of inequality. So the arrangement of languages on a sign, whether in terms of order, the size, the font, the position, reveals subtle hierarchies of power. Okay, for example, in the signs in United States, on their bilingual English and Spanish signs, English is almost always on top or in larger letters. And this is also true in other countries or in other nations, right? So English appears to be the most significant. It's given importance compared to other languages. So we call this, according to scholars, they call this notion as hierarchical multilingualism. So when you say hierarchical multilingualism, it is where diversity exists, but within a clear social order. Okay, so we can see multilingualism in it. It may seem to promote equality, but there is a subtle linguistic and political hierarchy present. So even if there are different languages present in the sign, still English is the most dominant. It's the most used language, giving it as the language that is hegemonic, right, in different public spaces. So another thing that we have to consider when we look about hierarchy is on the translation quality. So sometimes one language appears to be fully developed while another is abbreviated or even missing. So these two reflects power relations. So it shows which audiences are truly being addressed and respected. For instance, when we see signs that are written in English, but then there is an equivalent translation. But sometimes the English counterpart, okay, is it's still dominant. It's bigger, and while the translated text, okay, is sometimes it's there are lapses in terms of uh the grammar. So there is what we call, okay, still inequality, right? There is um hierarchy on the use of language. All right, now let's talk about branding. So in linguistic landscape, this is where multilingualism intersects with commerce, culture, and ideology. So given the context of modernization and globalization, business and institution often use languages that strategically construct an identity. So here, language becomes a symbolic resource, okay, wherein it is used to evoke certain emotions, lifestyles, or social aspirations. Let's take a look, for example, at the luxury brands. These luxury brands, for example, bags, right? They are written in English or in French or in Italian words because they convey sophistication, right? Another instance, those global fast food chains, diba, they are written in English, right? But somehow there are translations into the local language. However, this still poses the notion of globalization, right? Wherein uh, it's the the English language being the language of globalization is given more important. Though there are translations present, there's also a construct or notion that emerges, which is the term localization, okay, wherein global brands adapt to local contexts linguistically and culturally, right? So this practice illustrates what the social linguist Monica Heller calls the commodification of language. So when you say commodification of language, it is the idea that languages themselves can be marketed, stylized, and consumed like cultural products. Okay. So at a deeper level, multilingual signage allows people to see themselves represented in a public sphere. Okay, for example, when you see your own language on a sign, diba, it sends that it feels or it gives you a feeling of belongingness, diba? It's a feeling of being affirming. It says that, oh, I feel like I belong here because you see the language that is used in the public signs or in the public text, that you are part of this society. Conversely, or on the other hand, the absence of your language, okay, can signal exclusion. So thus, multilingualism in the linguistic landscape operates both as a symbol of coexistence and also as a site of struggle. Okay, wherein belonging, identity, and power are negotiated through the visibility of language. So the language is more visible, the language that is more utilized, Okay, it's the language that's more powerful. It gives a sense of belongingness to the users and speakers of these language. While those languages that are excluded, those languages which are not utilized in the linguistic landscape, it gives them a sense of being disowned or a sense of being not part of the community or the society. Okay, so through linguistic landscape, communities express who they are, who they value, and who they wish or hope to become. So in this sense, every multilingual sign, whether you're in a city street or in a market or maybe in an airport, it's a miniature map of the society that created it. All right. Now let's zoom out and look at the linguistic landscape on a global scale. So we are now living in a world increasingly shaped by globalization, right? So when I say globalization, that's just the intensified flow of people, products, and ideas across borders. So with this movement comes not just economic exchange, but also linguistic exchange. In other words, languages themselves circulate through global networks of commerce, media, and technology, acquiring new meanings and new values in the process. So perhaps the most visible linguistic effect of globalization is the rise of English as a global lingua franca, right? So this is evident, okay, in various places and various nations wherein English words appear in billboards, clothing, shop fronts, and digital ads. Interestingly, right, this isn't always because people need English to understand the message. Rather, English has become a symbolic language. Okay, when we talk about symbolic language, it means that it is a signifier of modernity, okay, global connection, or cosmopolitanism. Right? Like for example, this one, in Seoul, Korea, there's a coffee shop that is named as Urban Brew. Okay, so given this name, it is not to communicate with foreigners, but it actually projects an image of modern urban sophistication. Right? The same with another example on an Italian ad that is using English, even though the entire audience is Italian. So, what's the sense on it? This is because English connotes trendiness and global prestige. And this leads us to the notion or to the idea that uh, what Philipson calls as linguistic imperialism. So this is the global dominance of English, driven not only by historical colonization, but also by contemporary forces like neoliberal economics, mass media, and digital technology. So with the massive presence of English being the global lingua franca or the global language, so it asserts its it asserts the notion of linguistic imperialism as posited by Philipson. So under globalization, the ideology of neoliberalism, which treats everything as marketable commodity, has extended to language itself. So it does not only pertain to the use of products, but more on the language use. So languages are not just tools of communication, but they become products that can be bought, sold, or displayed, okay, to signify cultural capital. So, however, globalization doesn't simply erase local language. It actually often transforms them. So social linguists call these as glocalization. So when I say glocalization, that's the blending of global and local cultural elements. For example, in Manila, here in the Philippines, you might see there's a store named Pinoy Coffee House. Okay, here English merges with local language. So you have there the word Pinoy and then the coffee house, which is English. So Pinoy is the Filipino language, and then coffee house is the English language. So these create hybrid identities that are both globally connected and locally grounded. So this also shows linguistic creativity, right? which signifies that people are not just passive victims of global English, but they also appropriate and localize it to express who they are. Now, in the digital era, linguistic landscapes have expanded far beyond physical spaces. So it's not anymore on the physical space, but on the digital space. Social media profiles, online advertisements, websites, and digital billboards have become new sites where language, identity, and power intersect. Okay. So, for example, platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, language choice uh, becomes part of self-branding, right? And what do we see? What do we observe? Okay. It's usually English that has become the language of digital linguistic landscape. Okay. It's because some influencers, for instance, may use English hashtags to reach global audiences, given that English is considered as the global lingua franca, even if their content is in another language, right? So, originally, for example, the content of that creator is in Filipino, but then there's an equivalent translation for that in English, so that it will reach um, uh, global audiences. There are also instances in which digital users or influencers or creators mix languages strategically. So this is what scholars call translanguaging to express hybrid identities. So it's a mixing of different languages. Other example, we have yung mga luxury brands wherein they use algorithm optimized English keywords to appear more global and modern, even when they target local markets, right? So the commonality is that the digital linguistic landscape also embraced, okay, the use of the English language, given that it, it is the language of globalization. It's the global lingua franca. So here, power and ideology also circulate, just like the speed of technology. So these online landscapes reflect which voices are amplified and whose voices are marginalized. So just like in the physical spaces of studying linguistic landscape, still English is amplified and local languages are marginalized. So when we put all of these together, we see that globalization has not eliminated linguistic inequality. Rather, it has reshaped it. Okay. So right now, languages are now ranked according to their economic utility on market appeal, not just their cultural or communicative value. Okay. This means that language visibility in global spaces, whether in a billboard or digital screen, is deeply ideological. Okay. So there is a reason, an ideological assumption that uh, is shown behind every language used, okay, in a public sign or signage. Okay, so it encodes the values of the global capitalist system because, for example, English is being tagged as the language of efficiency, modernity, luxury, and global connectivity, right? So the globalization of language turns the linguistic landscape into a stage where ideology and commerce intersect. English and other dominant languages circulate as symbols of modernity and success, while local languages are commodified, marginalized, or reinvented. So both physical and digital landscapes reveal how language functions not just as a communication, but as capital, meaning it serves as an instrument of power, right? In a globalized world. All right. So at this point, let's take a look at how researchers actually study linguistic landscapes because all of the ideas or notions, concepts that we have discussed earlier so far about language, power, and ideology need to be grounded in concrete data and observation. So based on studies, that have been conducted in the field of linguistic landscape. This field is multidisciplinary, so it draws on social linguistics, semiotics, anthropology, geography, and even visual studies. So researchers don't just look at what languages appear in public spaces, but they also investigate how, where, and why they appear. So generally speaking, there are two main approaches to studying linguistic landscape. So these are quantitative and qualitative. Now, for the quantitative approach, it treats the linguistic landscape as a measurable set of data. So here, researchers systematically collect and categorize signs to identify patterns of language use. For example, you count the number of signs in each language, like how many signs used English, how many signs use Filipino, how many signs French or Chinese, right? So that's quantitative. So your record, how many signs are monolingual, bilingual, or multilingual. Now, this approach involves coding and statistical analysis to reveal trends. On the other hand, qualitative approach in linguistic landscape treats signs as text to be interpreted. Okay, so there is an involvement of interpreting the data set. So here, researchers are less interested in counting and they're more focused on reading the signs or the text. So they analyze, for example, the motivation, the communicative motivation behind the use of this language, the power dynamics, the ideologies, the meanings, the symbolic functions, right, behind language choices. So these are the common questions that can be used under qualitative method of studying linguistic landscape. So who created this sign and for whom? Okay, so who are the creators and who are the audience of these signs? What image or identity does the sign project? How do the color, typography, or design elements reinforce certain ideologies? Or are there ideologies in the first place that are being shown? So what does the placement of the sign tells us about who belongs in this space? So that's the focus of the qualitative. Now, there are also researches that combine both of these approach. The mixed method way of doing linguistic landscape research. So here you can start with counting the signs in terms of the language used and then doing the qualitative analysis, right? So these are some of the tools and techniques that researchers in linguistic landscape use to document and analyze data. So they can use photo documentation or photography. They can use mapping on GIS technology, field notes and interviews, as well as corpus and content analysis. Now, let me show you a sample research which I have conducted in the context of linguistic landscape. Particularly, it focuses on healthscape. Okay, so why did I choose healthscape as a focus of my study? It's because here in the Philippines, there are relatively few studies conducted on the linguistic landscape of health institutions and facilities. So in this study, I documented the signs and texts through photo documentation posted in a public hospital, okay, in our region, and conducted semi-structured interviews with the selected participants, both the sign makers and the audience. So specifically, I looked into the linguistic and non-linguistic features of the signs or the texts, the communicative and symbolic functions, and the ideologies of the sign makers and the audience. So, right, so this is the quantitative aspect wherein I analyze the texts, okay, the signages, in terms of the languages displayed, right? So we are looking here into the language practices, okay, that the healthscape has. So as you can see in the data, majority of the signs or the texts are in monolingual English, right? So there are a total of 132 signs, and out of 132, there are 96, right? Monolingual English signs. So what does this imply? Okay, so it basically shows the dominance of the English language in a health facility, the linguistic landscape of a health institution. So knowing that a health institution should be multilingual, given that it caters to a variety of clients, of patients. So in this study, it was found out that majority of their signs or texts were written in English. And these pose problems in terms of accessibility and understanding of the text, especially if the client or the patient does not understand the English language. So you can also see in the data that there are some texts or signs that are written in Waray, our local language. There are also bilingual signages, which uses both English Filipino and then English Waray. But there's only a few. There are only few instances of text or signs that are written using this language. Okay. So these results show the hegemonic, right, place of English, given that majority of the signs are written in English. So this actually coincides or corroborates with the findings of other linguistic landscape studies, wherein English has become the language not only of educational institutions, but also of health institutions as well, right? Now, in terms of, these are some examples of the signs or texts which I have collected. So these are some of the monolingual signs, English, Filipino, and Waray. Then these are some examples of bilingual and mixed languages signs. So in terms of mixed languages, it's very noticeable because there's only one text or sign written or using the mixed languages. So basically, this implies that the institution does not yet recognize the notion of being multilingual. Okay, so given that this is a government facility, it's a public facility, one of the recommendations of these studies that this facility or this institution must use multilingual languages to cater those patients or those clients, okay, who do not understand English. Now, in terms of the non-linguistic features, I also examined here the materiality, yeah, the font, the spacing, the capitalization, which languages are given prominence or importance. So as you can see, majority of the signs. These are just some of the signs, but of all the signs that I have examined or looked into, the text or the words written in English are highlighted. So English in these signs is given prominence, particularly through strategic placement and visual emphasis. So when I say strategic placement, it's either English words are written on top or it is in bold letters, it's capitalized. And so it's more readable, it's more noticeable compared to the other words written in the local languages. Okay. Now, there are some cases in which English appears alongside Filipino or Waray languages, but still, the English text is often positioned above or to the left of the local language text. Okay. In addition, important words were highlighted or emphasized using English through the use of capitalization, underlining, or boldface. So the overall arrangement of the signs indicates that English is dominant, as it is typically presented in larger, bolder fonts compared to Filipino and Waray languages. Okay, so in terms of strategic placement, visual emphasis, and inscription techniques, English, therefore, is positioned as the dominant language. Now, what does this imply? So this shows, as what I mentioned earlier, that local languages are silenced. They are marginalized because English is the only or majority of the signs, the language that's visible is the English language. Now, in terms of communicative functions, right? So given these data, most of the signs in the linguistic landscape of the research site, as you can see, there are majority of the signs are information signs. So it's informative in nature. So this also shows that the signs in the LL or in the linguistic landscape of the hospital are primarily crafted to inform the patients, employees, or visitors about health and medical information, okay, as well as some updates or even announcements which are vital as they navigate the sites, the locations, units, and sections of the hospital. All right, now let's go to the more interesting part of the study, which is in the symbolic functions of the languages used. Okay, so in terms of symbolic functions, each language, okay, has a different symbolism or symbolic function. For instance, for English, right? The signs or texts that were written in English symbolizes prestige, professionalism, and globality or globalization. So this is similar to what other studies have shown or have seen, wherein English is always associated as the language of prestige, is the language of professionalism, and of course, globality. On the other hand, the local languages, our national language, which is Filipino, it symbolizes inclusion, empathy, and national identity. Okay, because that's what the design makers or even the audience mentioned, that when they read text or signs in Filipino, it gives them a sense of being, belongingness, a sense of being included in the society, in the community, right? Well, for Waray language, our regional language here in Eastern Visayas, it serves as a language of accessibility, local belonging, and linguistic equality. Okay, so those are the symbolic functions of these languages. Now, in terms of ideologies, right, the linguistic choices in the hospital signage reveal differing ideological perspectives between the sign makers and the audience. So both parties, the sign makers and audience, prioritize effective communication for readers. However, their emphasis differ or diverge. The sign makers, on the one hand, deliberately employ English, Filipino, and Waray for practical reasons, selecting languages that are widely used and accessible across public audiences. In contrast, the audience places particular importance on English and Waray, recognizing their roles as global and local languages. And these address international and local readerships, respectively. Notably, it can be seen that the inclusion of Filipino in the signage reflects an ideological stance that is not explicitly shared by the audience. So this discrepancy indicates a divergence in communicative priorities. So while the audience privileges languages with established global and local significance, the sign makers adopt a more inclusive approach. So they want to incorporate Filipino language to accommodate a broader range of users and to reflect the linguistic diversity of the population. So these choices suggest that the sign maker strategy or ideology is guided by inclusivity. Okay, and the aim is facilitate equitable access to information across socioeconomic and linguistic groups. All right, so to conclude, a linguistic landscape is not just about language, it's about who gets to speak publicly and whose words shape the shared environment. So every sign we see in a public space is part of an ongoing conversation about belonging, authority, and identity. So this, I would like to leave you with this key idea. The linguistic landscape functions as a visible manifestation of power and ideology in public spaces, where language choices not only reflect, but also produce or reproduce social hierarchies and political agenda. So thank you so much for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Harriet, for that insightful presentation about linguistic landscape. And once again, thank you to both of our speakers, Mr. Joseph and Dr. Harriet, for sharing their expertise with us this morning. Okay, everyone, so we have approximately 15 minutes for the Q&A session. and we will now open the floor for the discussion. If any of our participants have questions or comments, please feel free to click the raise hand button or write them in the chat box. Okay, we have the first student here to ask a question. Yes, please, Laila Nurihma. You may open your microphone.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna write down my question. It is for Miss Joseph and Mrs. Harriet. So wait.
Yes, Laila, you may also ask directly to the speakers, actually. Okay, so while waiting for, okay, yeah, we've got the questions already. So first, right now we already know that most of students uses AI for their homework or chores, but most of the students write down or answer it by themselves without any help from AI. So if there's a student who doesn't uses AI for their works, but when it checked on Turnitin or AI detector, it shows that the student's work is 75% or 100% uses AI, but the truth is not. How do you as the lecturer solve the problem? That's the first question from Mr. Joseph. You may answer the question first, Mr. Joseph.
Okay, thank you so much, Sastra. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Okay. Yeah, I definitely believe that not all generative AIs are reliable in terms of the result, because they often produce false positives. So we call this false positives when you turn in your output in the Turnitin software, for example, because there are also instances in my own classes that there are students would complain that their output were flagged, as AI generated, but in fact, from them, it's not. They claim it as it's not AI generated. They wrote it by themselves authentically. Okay, so what I commonly do is I I um I conduct an one in-person activity in the classroom to reevaluate the content, the authenticity of the output of my students, to really check if they're the one who really wrote their essays, for example. So the one that I showed in my presentation before, the use of double entry reflective journaling. So I conduct this with my classes in person after I gave a major, especially for major uh writing activities. So after that, after they submit their written activities, and then I after I got the results from Turnitin, whatever results they have, it would inform my feedback for them, okay, for each of my students' output. And then I conduct a I let them answer or write for the double entry reflective journaling activity inside the classroom in person. So that would corroborate uh the output that they wrote in the written activity to the journaling entry that they have. And this would somehow um uh this would provide somehow a platform that would explain and somehow defend the work that it is truly written by them. Okay, and then it will with these activities, it will surely inform my assessment uh practices or process that I do in my classes. So that's it. I just usually have this activity, and then aside from that, one other way that I use is an open dialogue with my students or the student concerned who has that issue, to have an open dialogue, talking with him or her about the process. So I look into the process of writing. Okay. So disregarding the product of the writing activity, which were flagged, for example, as a AI generated, in fact it was not. So I go back to the writing process that that student go through. So what did you do with the draft? How did you go through it in writing? So with that, this is also one way to really check if the students was the one who really wrote the output or not.
Okay.
I hope I was able to answer
Yes,
the question.
it's pretty clear, Mr. Joseph. Thank you for your
Thank you.
explanation. The next question is still from Laila Nurrahma. This one is for Dr. Harriet. So, how does the mistranslated English shop names in Asian tourist areas like Fat Girl or Pink Piggy in Thailand or China affect consumers' perception and reflect sociolinguistic dynamics in the public language landscape?
Yes, thank you for that question. I guess these mistranslated sign, right? It's called ano yun, Fat Girl or Pink Piggy in Thailand or China. So I think this is a translation wherein um it may affect consumer or customers' perception. No? Okay, it may affect, I guess, in diverse ways. So it may sound humorous, or maybe the sign makers intentionally uh translated it in that way so that it may sound like stylish. We call these as a stylized sign, right? And to create or exude humor on the part of the readers. Now here, given that it's mistranslated, it basically reflects how English, okay, operates not just as a communicative resource, but also as a symbolic resource. Okay, so basically we can see different social linguistic aspects. For example, we can see here the notion of globalization, commodification, and identity, right? So it also contributes to hybridity. Okay, the notion of hybridity in linguistic landscape, which I have mentioned earlier. So it's a fusion, it's a collaboration, a combination of these constructs, the notion of globalization, hybridity, commodification in a multilingual public space, right? Wherein English becomes part of a, what do you call this, local expressive culture rather than a form of a communicative resource. So I hope was able to answer your question.
Yes, I think it explains, you have explained a lot, Dr. Harriet. So the second question goes to Dr. Harriet. This is from Bapak Oktiva Heri Chandra. So based on your research, what are the possible reasons or cultural motivations behind integrating local linguistic with established English language brands? And is it possible to have different interpretation because of different cultural background of the reader?
All right. Yeah. So, I guess the possible reasons or cultural motivation on the use of the local languages with established English language brands is to assert identity, okay? Or another thing is to assert the notion of multilingualism, or it also serves as a linguistic equalizer, right? And uh, is it possible to have different interpretation? Yes, there's a possibility. that there are different interpretations in terms of the given word. And so it's very important that there is as what I mentioned earlier, there should be a corresponding translation, right? So that there will be no misinterpretation of the words or of the terms used in the signage.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Harriet. And then we have the next question from Ashifa. This is for Mr. Joseph. I have a question to Mr. Joseph. What is the clear boundary between using AI as an academic tool and committing plagiarism or academic dishonestly?
All right, thank you so much, Shifa. That's a very important question indeed. So the boundaries. So we're talking here the boundaries. So the boundaries lies actually in how and why artificial intelligence is used in the classroom. When students like you use AI as a learning aid or a support in the writing process that I mentioned in my previous discussion, for example, to brainstorm ideas or to check grammar, to improve your sentences or summarize information, or to understand a difficult concept, as mentioned also as one of the responses in the initial survey that I gave you. So it functions as an academic tool indeed in support to the writing process. Okay, so it supports learning without replacing the student's own thinking and writing. However, when these generative AI tools is used to produce entire outputs, the entire essay, for example. So it's a different story already. So it detaches from the process that we have in the writing activity. So for example, in writing essay or reports or reflections that you as a student would submit as their own, that becomes academic dishonesty already, or even a plagiarism that is a scene in the university. Okay, because the work no longer represents the students' understanding or their effort. So in short, the key principle here is the establishment of transparency and authorship, the authorial voice of the writer. So we should consider that AI should support the learning process, and it should not substitute. Okay, as mentioned in my last slide in my presentation. And students should always acknowledge AI assistance when it meaningfully contributes to their entire work that they would submit to their professors. That's my take for the question. I hope I was able to understand correctly the question of Ashifa, and I was able to provide a specific answer for that question.
Yes, it's pretty clear. So thank you very much, Mr. Joseph and Dr. Merculo, for your enlightening responses. And thank you to all participants for your active engagement today. Unfortunately, because we have limited time, so we have to bring the session to a close. I think this first session has given us meaningful perspectives on how technology and language intersect with education and society, from understanding the potential and challenges of AI-assisted writing assessment to uncovering the ways language reflects power and ideology in public spaces. So that concludes our first session, everyone. Let us give another round of appreciation to our distinguished speakers for their valuable insights. Now, I'd like to hand the session back to our MC. Over to you, Adisti.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph and Dr. Harriet for the insightful session. And also thank you to Ms. Diaz as the moderator who has guided the engaging discussion today. I would also like to thank all participants who have participated in this event from the beginning until the end. To obtain the e-certificate, don't forget to fill out the attendance link that has been shared in the chat. And also, there will be the second session to this visiting professor program, which will be held at 12:30 WIB. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to say thank you for joining us today and see you in our future events. Hopefully, what we learned today will be useful for all of us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to our moderator, Ms. Diaz, for excellently moderating our sessions, and to our MC, Ms. Adisti. And we also wanted to thank our participants, of course, the faculty participants and students for listening to our lectures. I hope that you learned something despite of the time pressure and the limited time that we have.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Joseph
you
and
very
Dr.
Thank you
Harriet.
so
Very
much,
much. Thank you very much.
Ms. Diaz, Dr.
And of course, to
Activa.
Dr. Activa, thank you so much.
Thank you so
so
much.
much.